Hey everybody, welcome back to this YouTube channel. I'm Callan Fisher. It is college basketball rankings for this week to see who moved up, who moved down, and who stayed the same. We'll just go ahead and start out with who was ranked last week and is no longer ranked this week. That was a team that was ranked 21, Georgia Bulldogs, lost, and they lost to Texas. Yes, at Texas, but it was that 20-point deficit for a lot of the second half that really killed them, and they're no longer ranked. So they're the only team that dropped out of the rankings. Everybody else stayed in the rankings, and one team obviously joined the rankings, and that team slid in right at that 25 spot, St. John's. Now, St. John's is a team, they've been amazing in their conference. They've been amazing. Their only loss in their conference is the Providence, which is not a good loss, but they beat teams like Villanova, and I'm excited to see how they match up against UConn. I think UConn's going to win, but I wonder what that margin of victory for UConn will be. So that's something to note for St. John's. But what concerns me definitely is their non-conference losses, which is a loss to Alabama, and then to Iowa State, and then Auburn, and then Kentucky. Because I'm always looking ahead to March Madness and for March Madness, and I love to compare teams' conference records to their non-conference records. Because here's the thing, March Madness, you don't normally play teams in your conference. In fact, I just finished reading Bracketology by Joe Lunardi, and he actually says in the book that a lot of the committee members and the way that they see teams, they don't want first round or second round um, teams to be in the same conference. So March Madness is when you play non-conference teams like you did at the beginning of the season, and you really won't start to face teams in your conference till um, the Elite Eight, really, and if you're lucky, the Sweet 16. Um, that's why I love to look at teams' non-conference records, and non-conference record for St. John's, not a big fan of for me. But let's move on to number 24, Miami, Ohio, who is undefeated. They are undefeated, one of the few teams left that is undefeated. And I think they're really only ranked just because they're undefeated. If they weren't undefeated, they would not be ranked. And I think if you put them in almost any other conference in the entire country, they would not be undefeated. Miami, Ohio, they're a pretty good team, but they're not a great team, and I don't know if they're really a top 25 team in the country. So my list and my rankings would not include them in it. But if they can last into that last weekend of February, first weekend of March, and still be undefeated, then they should definitely be ranked. But they'll lose before then, I'm sure of it. Number 23 is Alabama. Alabama's doing pretty decent. They took a big fall 6 spots due to a loss at home against Tennessee, although Tennessee did receive many votes to be in the top 25 but did not make the cut. Now, here's what concerns me with Alabama. It's their losses against Gonzaga, Arizona, Vandy, Texas, and most recently on Saturday, Tennessee. Because those losses are pretty big. That's their most disappointing loss in my opinion. Arizona, you lost the number one team in the country. Totally understand that, totally get it. Gonzaga, okay, that's not bad, but Gonzaga was blown out by 40 against Michigan. So something to note there. So that made Alabama's loss in the same week because they were all in the ESPN Invitational or Las Vegas Invitational, whatever that tournament was for the NIT money, that Thanksgiving weekend. So that was a big tournament, very fun to watch too. And we discovered very quickly about a lot of teams in that tournament who they were going to be this year. And for Alabama, they turned out to be a team where I think they are going to win against the teams in the games they should win, but they're not going to be able to beat those top 10 teams in the country or top 5 teams in the country. But let's keep the list rolling. 22 is Clemson. They're 17-4. They're doing what they need to do in the ACC. They're winning the games they got to win. And something to note, they're Georgia's only non-conference loss, which was very good, but Georgia's now out of the rankings for one of the first times in a while, in a couple of weeks, that they're not having a number by their name. So Georgia is out, and Clemson is their only non-conference loss, and that came early in the season. But Clemson's doing really good this year. I could definitely see that team getting into the second round, possibly the Sweet 16. Definitely possibly the Sweet 16, but I don't think they can make it further than that. So this team could win a few games in March, which is what you want. 21 is St. Louis, or Louis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't watch them because they're just not in a big power school. They're not in a big power conference. So not much to say about them. They're only ranked probably because they're 19-1. You put them in any other conference, they'd be almost winless. Louisville, they're 20, 14-5. They're doing great this year. They kind of struggle against in competitive games, and once again, competitive games and non-conference games are two very common things in the March Madness tournament, which concerns me. Louisville could definitely struggle in the tournament, and making me think that if maybe they potentially match up against Clemson, which would have to come later in the tournament, but possibly if they're lucky in the Sweet 16 because they're in the same conference, as I said earlier, Clemson would probably beat them in a tournament game. At 19 is Florida. Florida. Now, if you haven't watched my video yet on if Florida's going to go back-to-back, watch that. It's a very good video. You need to go and watch it. It's still relevant because we don't know if Florida has gone back-to-back yet. And I said, I'm not going to spoil that. You can go and figure that out if I said they're going to go back-to-back. But Florida, they're doing pretty good. And for them to go back-to-back so far, I'm only going to state the facts here. They're 14-6 right now as I'm making this video, which you don't really want to be a team like Nebraska that's undefeated and Arizona with one loss. A lot of champions come with definitely a few losses under their belt, so Florida's positioning themselves very well. 18 is Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, they have 3 conference losses that came back to back to back, and their only losses so far this season. At Texas, first Florida, at Arkansas. Let's break them down one by one. At Texas, not too bad of a loss. Texas is playing very well, and they played very well at home this weekend against Georgia on Saturday. First Florida, losing at home to Florida, not the best. I don't like that loss at all. And at Arkansas, yes, they were on the road, but they should have won that game, especially with 2 losses prior. They should have made a bounce back. So, in my opinion, not a good loss for them either. So, the only loss that is kind of understandable is Texas for me. All right, let's keep the list going. 17, Virginia, 16-3. They're doing what they got to do. They've had some close games this year. Lost to Virginia Tech on New Year's Eve. That was a close game. I think they went into 2 or 3 overtimes. So, competitive game. You love to see in-state rivalries like that. Amazing. Number 16 is UNC. UNC, now, they're a little questionable for me. Their loss to SMU, 100% understandable. SMU does not currently have a number by their name, I believe, but they have been ranked in the previous week or two, and they're playing very well at home. So SMU, understandable loss, but a loss kind of early in the season. I believe it was actually Thanksgiving. It was to Michigan State, which is understandable, but it's that margin for me. And if you've watched my videos before, I normally talk a lot about the margins, like I said earlier, against St. John's when they match up and play UConn. I always like to look at the margin of victory for teams. 74-58, that's questionable going up against Michigan State, and UNC and Michigan State could be a March Madness game. So I don't really like that for them. Not a good loss margin. Good loss to Michigan State, but I don't like the margin. Now, they also lost to Stanford, which is not good. If you just look at Stanford's record, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's okay. They got a lot of wins. Yeah, but look at the conference record. Conference records are doing awful. So good job for Stanford for doing good in non-conference games, but they're not doing good in conference games, and that kills UNC. But that was at Stanford, along with their loss against Cal, which is not a good loss at all. Cal has a losing record in the ACC. Not a good loss for UNC at all. But fine, if you want to use excuses and say, well, they're on the West Coast. Yeah, good point. Maybe you could write that down as a reason why the ACC should not have teams in their conference on the West Coast. 15, Arkansas. Um, they got a great coach. He's doing great. Arkansas is a good place to play, competitive. As I said earlier, I didn't like Vandy's loss there. I still don't like their loss there, and I don't think that'll change no matter how good or how bad Arkansas does for the remainder of almost 2 months, a little under 2 months left in the season, regular season. But I think Arkansas has a lot of room to improve, and I think they're going to be a good team, and they're definitely a team that if I have to play in the tournament, I'm saying not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 prayers, because you're probably going to need it. All right, let's move to 14, Kansas. Kansas, something that really concerns me right off the bat. They're 161st in points per game in the country. Not good. I don't like this, especially from a team that's ranked and ranked where they are, which is 14th in the country. That's concerning to me. I don't like that. Let's look at their losses. They lost to UNC. Just talked about UNC 2 slots ago at 16th, and that's okay. Okay, that's a good loss. They were at UNC versus UConn. That's fine. Okay, that's a good loss to UConn. Losses, though, yes, on the road, but to UFC in West Virginia, I don't like those losses. That concerns me for Kansas. All right, 13 is BYU. BYU, they're one of the teams this year, or this week in the rankings. They stayed the same. They're a great three-point shooting team. Hard place to play. A very hard place to play. They played very well. And against many teams, they're a great three-point shooting team. Awesome. Really turned it on, especially last year, making it to the Sweet 16 in the tournament. Number 12, Purdue. 3 losses. Iowa State earlier in the season. Understandable, right? Yes, of course. Iowa State losses. Understandable. We'll get to them in a little bit. Back-to-back losses against UCLA, at UCLA, and Illinois. Illinois is also ranked high on the list. Them and Iowa State are both in the top 10. So 2 top 10 losses for Purdue, which is pretty understandable. I mean, not really for Purdue's standards, but in the whole scheme of things, it's understandable. Their loss to UCLA, very concerning. UCLA was ranked earlier in the season. They've fallen off the rails, and they're no longer ranked. That's not a good loss for them at all. Let's keep the list going to Texas Tech at 11. Texas Tech was actually blown out in a tournament game earlier this season against Purdue. It was an awful game by Texas Tech. Not good. They've really made improvements. They have a great head coach, and this team is turning it on, in my opinion, at the right moment. They're 16-4, and I like them being positioned at the 11th spot with 4 losses. That's really good for them. Really good. Number 10, Houston. Kelvin Sampson's their coach. He's a great coach. He's got him at 17-2. I like that. Houston is going to be a fun team to watch, and along with just a Big 12 conference when we get into conference tournaments before March Madness. I'm interested to see how this team's going to do, and they've done very good throughout this season. Very impressed. Number 9 is Illinois. Illinois is 17-3. They beat Purdue just this week. Great win. They are doing great things in the Big Ten. Brad Underwood is one of the best coaches. He did very good at Oklahoma State before he left Oklahoma State to come to Illinois. I'm pretty sure. I don't think there was a team in between. You may need to double check me on that. But very good coach. And they're really turning it on, really hammering it in those wins right now. And they're going to be another team that's very scary to face in the Big Ten tournament. I could see them running away with it and winning the Big Ten tournament. Yes, I said that. They have a great chance of beating teams like Michigan State, Nebraska, and Michigan. I think you're interested in my thoughts for Nebraska being 20-0. We'll get to them. Number 8, Iowa State. Great team. One of the coaches, their head coach actually, one of the strongest head coaches, muscular-wise, I've ever seen. He has to work out the team. Very good. And the whole team's in shape. Very physical team. They play great at home. The crowd gets into it. This is a team that I don't want to play at home. But if I'm a team that's in the 12 and up spot and in March Madness on a road game for both teams, I say bring it on. I think they're a team that I like, but I don't see them going to the Elite Eight. Maybe the Sweet 16. Number 7, Michigan State. They've had a lot of great wins, conference and non-conference related, like beating UNC. I like Michigan State's team. I like Tom Izzo, and I said this last year. I don't think Tom Izzo can win a national championship with Michigan State. I just don't think it's possible. So for that reason, I'm passing for Michigan State this year, winning the tournament, going to the Final Four, going to the Elite Eight. They'll lose in the Sweet 16. Number 6, Gonzaga. 1 loss to Michigan. Fine. 40 points. Not good. But Gonzaga's a great team. Now, they don't really have a tough schedule remaining, so I do expect them to probably win out, maybe lose 1 game. We'll see. Not much to say on them, but let's keep it going with Nebraska. 20-0. Nebraska's probably going to lose at some point. As I'm making this video, they're playing Michigan tonight, and it's going to be a great game. Michigan's favored by, when I looked at the line this morning, I haven't looked at it since, it was 10.5. I think they're going to lose to Michigan. But we'll get to Michigan right after we hit with Duke at 4. Duke's had a close game. They have 1 loss. They've had close games like the teams that are not good, like Georgia Tech. I keep on going back to that game every time I think about this Duke team because that kind of concerns me. They have not been as dominant at home as I would have hoped they would have been and what they've been in previous years. But they're still a really good team. Their margin of victory is going to close up this year compared to previous years, especially towards the end of the season. But they're great, and I like where they are. And the last 3 teams have stayed the same, have not moved. Michigan's 18-1. 1 loss is to the Wisconsin Badgers, as I'm wearing their sweatshirt. Just going to point that out for everyone that we beat them. Their only loss so far this season. And Michigan was at home. So we beat them. Great loss for Michigan. But I think Michigan's a really good team. Great team. Dusty May is a great coach. He's really transformed after the program, after they had Juan Howard as their coach, who I'm not a fan of, and I've spoken about him on this channel before. I've not been a fan of him at all. Number 2 is UConn. They're 19-1. They're doing great. Love him, Dan Hurley. Love his energy. It's great for the game. Basketball, they're a great team. Arizona, they had 60 votes for first place, and I like that. They're 20-0. They're great. They're doing really good against their conference teams. They're winning by a lot. They're not playing a lot of tough teams, though, and the best teams in the conference. So I'm going to be excited when the tournament comes and they'll have to face teams like Houston. I was drawing a mind blank there. Sorry. But teams like Houston and BYU. So that'll be very interesting. So that was number 1. And it's going to be interesting to see this whole college basketball season plays out. I'm Kellen Fisher. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.